December 10th, 2021. The photograph hangs in quiet dignity in the National Archives. Berlin, September 27th, 1940. Adolf Hitler stands at center, flanked by Japanese Ambassador Saburo Kurusu and Italian Foreign Minister Count Galeazzo Ciano. German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop looms in the background, his expression a mix of triumph and calculation. The men have just signed the Tripartite Pact, a document that would bind three authoritarian regimes into a single, fateful alliance against a common enemy: Franklin D. Roosevelt's United States of America. To the casual observer, the image suggests unity, purpose, even inevitability. But the truth is far more complex. The road to this moment was not paved with shared ideology or mutual trust, but with fits and starts, strategic miscalculation, and a growing desperate fear of American power. The Tripartite Pact was not born of brotherhood. It was forged in shared enmity and in the chilling realization that neither Nazi Germany nor Imperial Japan could achieve global dominance alone. The story begins not in 1940, but 4 years earlier, in November 1936, when Germany and Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact. On the surface, it was a straightforward agreement. Both nations pledged to oppose the spread of Communist International Comintern propaganda and to exchange intelligence on Soviet activities. The pact reflected a genuine alignment. Both regimes were virulently anti-communist. Hitler saw Bolshevism as a Jewish conspiracy to destroy Aryan civilization. Japan's militarists viewed the Soviet Union as the chief obstacle to their vision of an East Asian co-prosperity sphere. Yet even at its inception, the alliance was asymmetrical and unstable. Germany sought a partner against the USSR in Europe. Japan wanted a counterweight to Soviet influence in Asia, but their strategic priorities diverged sharply. Germany remained deeply entangled with Britain and France, nations Japan saw as colonial rivals in Asia. Japan, meanwhile, maintained cautious diplomatic ties with the Soviet Union, even as it invaded China. For the next 5 years, German-Japanese relations followed no linear path. They were marked by missed opportunities, conflicting war aims, and mutual suspicion. What finally brought them back together in the fall of 1940 was not ideology, but a shared perception of existential threat from the United States. Two events in 1939 shattered the fragile logic of the Anti-Comintern Pact and forced both powers to rethink their global strategy. In the remote borderlands between Manchukuo, Japan's puppet state in Manchuria, and the Mongolian People's Republic, a Soviet satellite, the Japanese Kwantung Army launched a series of incursions in the spring of 1939. Confident after earlier victories over Russia in 1905, and emboldened by reports of Stalin's purges of Red Army leadership, Japanese commanders believed they could defeat Soviet forces with speed and aggression. They were catastrophically wrong. Under the command of General Georgy Zhukov, the Red Army deployed a combined arms doctrine: tanks, artillery, aircraft, and infantry working in concert, that overwhelmed Japan's light infantry tactics. After months of brutal fighting, the Japanese suffered a decisive defeat. In August 1939, 8,600 killed, 9,000 plus wounded, hundreds of tanks and aircraft destroyed. Historian Richard B. Frank called Nomonhan a battle that rightly deserves ranking among the most important of World War II. It proved that Japan could not defeat the Soviet Union, a lesson that would shape Tokyo's strategy for the rest of the war. Just weeks after Nomenhan, Hitler stunned the world by signing a non-aggression pact with Stalin. Ribbentrop, Hitler's sycophantic foreign minister, had convinced the Führer that a temporary alliance with Moscow would allow Germany to invade Poland without Soviet interference. For Japan, this was a diplomatic betrayal. The Anti-Comintern Pact was now null and void. Germany had aligned with the very power Japan had pledged to oppose. The twin shocks of military defeat and diplomatic abandonment triggered a political crisis in Tokyo. Prime Minister Kiichiro Hiranuma, a staunch anti-communist who had championed the German alliance, resigned on August 30th, 1939. His successor, General Nobuyuki Abe, immediately opened negotiations with Stalin, leading to the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact of April 1941, a direct repudiation of the anti-Comintern framework. For the next year, Japan withdrew from the Axis orbit, focusing instead on consolidating its position in China and avoiding a two-front war. While Japan recalibrated, events in Europe reshaped the global balance of power and awakened American resolve. In April-June 1940, Nazi Germany executed a lightning campaign that conquered Denmark, Norway, the Low Countries, and France. Britain stood alone. The collapse of France, in particular, created a power vacuum in Southeast Asia, home to French Indochina, Dutch East Indies, and British Malaya, all rich in rubber, tin, and oil. Japan saw opportunity. In September 1940, it moved troops into northern French Indochina, signaling its intent to dominate the region. But this move triggered a forceful American response. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, long constrained by isolationist sentiment, now acted with growing urgency. July 1940, Congress passed the Two-Ocean Navy Act, authorizing the construction of 1,325 warships, the largest naval expansion in U.S. history. May 1940, Roosevelt ordered the U.S. Pacific Fleet moved from San Diego to Pearl Harbor, extending America's defensive perimeter 2,500 miles westward. September 1940, the U.S. implemented the first peacetime draft and finalized the Destroyers for Bases Agreement with Britain, trading 50 aging destroyers for 99-year leases on Atlantic bases. October 1940, Washington imposed a scrap metal embargo on Japan, followed by a full oil embargo in July 1941, a move that cut off 80% of Japan's fuel supply. Simultaneously, Roosevelt increased aid to Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist China, whose 1939-40 winter offensive demonstrated that Japan's war in China was far from won. To Tokyo and Berlin, the message was clear. America was preparing for war. In Berlin, Ribbentrop saw an opportunity. If Germany, Italy, and Japan could present a united front, perhaps Roosevelt could be deterred from intervening in Europe or Asia. The logic was simple. If the U.S. entered the war against one Axis power, it would face war on three fronts: Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. In Tokyo, Prime Minister Fumimaro Konoe was more cautious. The Japanese army was deeply anti-British, but reluctant to provoke America. Yet with U.S. sanctions tightening and oil reserves dwindling, Konoe saw the pact as a diplomatic shield, a way to buy time and signal. Resolve. Negotiations moved quickly. Ribbentrop dispatched his aide, Heinrich Stammer, to Tokyo. Stammer, who would later become Germany's ambassador to Japan, read the mood perfectly. Japan feared American power, but was not yet ready for war. On September 27, 1940, The three powers signed the Tripartite Pact in Berlin's Reich Chancellery. The agreement was deceptively simple. Each of the three powers recognizes and respects the leadership of Germany and Italy in the establishment of a new order in Europe, and of Japan in the establishment of a new order in Greater East Asia. Should any of the three powers be attacked by a power not presently involved in the European or Sino-Japanese conflicts, the other two will assist with all political, economic, and military means. Though never named, the power not presently involved was unmistakable: the United States of America. The pact was defensive in wording, offensive in intent. None of the signatories had any intention of remaining defensive. Hitler was already planning Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the USSR. Japan was preparing to seize the Dutch East Indies. Mussolini dreamed of a new Roman Empire in the Mediterranean. Yet the pact served its immediate purpose. It formalized a global axis of authoritarian regimes, united not by ideology, but by shared opposition to American-led liberal order. Despite the pomp of the signing ceremony, the alliance was fundamentally flawed. There was no military coordination. Unlike the Allies, the Axis powers never established joint command structures, shared intelligence fully, or synchronized operations. Their conflicting priorities deepened the rift. Germany wanted Japan to attack the Soviet Union. Japan wanted Germany to pressure Britain in Asia. Neither obliged. Even the pact's core premise, that it would deter the U.S., misguided. Roosevelt and his advisors saw the Tripartite Pact not as a threat, but as confirmation of Axis aggression. As 1940 drew to a close, American newspapers, military planners, and the public increasingly viewed war with the Axis as inevitable. The pact had not deterred America. It had accelerated the march to global conflict. The Tripartite Pact reached its tragic climax in December 1941. By late 1941, Japan's oil reserves were down to 12 months. Diplomatic talks with the U.S. had stalled. Konoe had resigned, replaced by General Hideki Tojo, who believed war was unavoidable. On December 7th, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Germany, bound by the Tripartite Pact, declared war on the United States on December 11th, a decision Hitler made without consulting Mussolini or Tokyo. In one stroke, the pact achieved the exact opposite of its intended purpose. It did not deter America. It unified the American public behind total war. It merged the European and Pacific conflicts into a single global struggle. The United States, with its unbombed industrial base, vast resources, and population of 130 million, now faced the Axis with undivided resolve. The Tripartite Pact collapsed as quickly as it formed. 1943, Italy surrendered after the Allied invasion of Sicily. 1945, Germany and Japan fought to the bitter end, separately, desperately, and without meaningful coordination. Historians now agree the pact was less a strategic alliance than a marriage of convenience, a temporary alignment of authoritarian regimes that shared little beyond fear of American power and contempt for democracy. Yet its historical significance is undeniable. The Tripartite Pact formalized the global nature of World War II, exposed the limits of authoritarian cooperation, galvanized American resolve to defend the liberal international order. It stands as a stark reminder that alliances built on enmity, not shared values, are doomed to fail. Today, as new authoritarian powers challenge the post-war order, the story of the Tripartite Pact offers a timeless warning. Deterrence through intimidation rarely works. Hitler and Tojo believed that a show of unity would make America back down. Instead, it united a divided democracy and unleashed the full might of the American arsenal. The photograph from Berlin in 1940 captures a moment of apparent strength. But in hindsight, it reveals something else, the desperation of regimes that knew, deep down, they could not win alone. They sought to divide their enemy. Instead, they unified it. And in doing so, they sealed their own fate. The Tripartite Pact was never about brotherhood. It was about fear. Fear of a rising America. Fear of democratic resilience. Fear of a world they could not control. But in their attempt to contain the United States, Hitler, Mussolini, and Japan's militarists made their gravest error. They underestimated the power of a nation united not by ideology, but by principle. The pact did not prevent war, it guaranteed it. And in the end, it proved that no alliance built on hatred can withstand the force of a people determined to defend freedom. The Tripartite Pact was never about brotherhood. It was about fear. Fear of a rising America. Fear of democratic resilience. Fear of a world they could not control. But in their attempt to contain the United States, Hitler, Mussolini, and Japan's militarists made their gravest error. They underestimated the power of a nation, united not by ideology, but by principle. The pact did not prevent war, it guaranteed it. And in the end, it proved that no alliance built on hatred can withstand the force of a people determined to defend freedom. If this story deepened your understanding of how global alliances shape history, if you believe the lessons of 1940 still resonate in today's world, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. By subscribing, you help preserve the truth of history, not as myth, but as sober, strategic, and deeply human narrative. You'll receive no sensationalism, no shortcuts, just carefully researched, respectfully told history made for those who remember and for those who carry the lessons forward. Thank you for watching, and thank you for seeking the truth.